Hi, friends. As many of you know, I'm Tracey Pugh. I've been married to my husband Mark for 26 years, and I have 4 daughters, Noelle, Afton, Jessica, and Natalie. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but currently reside in Crozet, Virginia. We are situated in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains, just 15 miles west of Charlottesville, Virginia. Despite its negative presence in the media in the recent years, Charlottesville is a beautiful place to live. I first heard my call to ministry as a part-time youth minister. I served in this capacity for 5 years. Then, in 2015, I was called to full-time ministry as the minister to children, youth, and community connections, also known as associate minister. I continue to serve in this role, and I have been a member/attender of Crozet Baptist Church for 20 years. My personal formation story. I did not grow up in the church. We occasionally went to a Methodist church. It was very sporadic. There was never any rhyme or reason, as we would go for a while and then we wouldn't. I didn't really understand, but I also didn't know enough to ask very many questions. We went enough, though, that even occasionally when I was on my own in college, I would go to church for a time. My spiritual formation really is the product of several Andrews in my life, coupled with the storms of this life. What I mean by Andrews, you will recall, and you've probably heard it preached recently, or maybe even you preached it, as it was the lectionary reading last Sunday, John 1:35 through 51, the calling of the first disciples. Andrew, one of the first 4, brought his brother Simon Peter to Jesus. And every time we see Andrew in the scriptures, he's always bringing someone to Christ. I feel as though there have been a handful of Andrews in my life that guided me along the path to at least a certain point. There was an Andrew that first invited me to bring my daughter to evening activities at the church, which led to an Andrew who invited me to the ladies' Bible study on Sunday mornings. This led to an Andrew who invited me to go to worship, and ultimately several Andrews who encouraged me to get involved in programs and ministries of the church until I was finally entrenched enough to accept Christ as my personal Lord and Savior. Once I knew I had Jesus, I thought that it was somehow going to be easy, or that everything in my life would be well, but I was wrong. You see, I did not really exercise any personal disciplines. All were in the context of doing ministry. As John Drury would put it, focusing on what I was called to, not who I was called to. I was doing and not being with Christ. At the time, all of this seemed great. It was all I knew. I was going to worship, I was serving on ministry teams, and my Bible study consisted of 45 minutes of class every Sunday. However, this did not develop an authentic relationship with the living God. This reality explains why, when I began to experience a season of terrible storms in my life, one after the other, I couldn't find God. I didn't know how to find Him. I didn't understand who He was, and I certainly didn't understand why any of this was happening. God began to reveal Himself to me in ways I could not understand, but I also could not deny. I believe my call to ministry was God's call to me to finally engage in relationship with Him. As the youth minister, I was learning as much as I was teaching because I was reading scripted lessons that spoke to me and taught me as they spoke to the rest of the class. Thus was the beginning of my spiritual formation in a new and different way, personal. I was the person Steve Hayes described in our Embracing Wesleyan Spirituality article this week for our other class, that disciplines were ends, not means. They were proofs that I was a Christian, but not part of my everyday life. Anyway, throughout storm after storm, I began to see who God was, and what once were desperate pleas and prayers for help became heartfelt requests for presence, strength, wisdom, and guidance. Our church hasn't been, and I've been there for about 20 years, and still is not intentional about teaching spiritual disciplines. We encourage prayer and worship, and we occasionally step on toes for this or that, and we teach the importance of tithing once a year. But just as I never really got the importance of connecting with God in every aspect of my life, so others are not getting it either. This is perhaps why my personal formation has been delayed, difficult, and even a bit backwards in the grand scheme of things. I'm excited to learn more about the disciplines and how we can help our congregations grow and never become weary of coming closer to Christ in every aspect of their lives.